So from there, we talk about the impact of the introduction of money economy in the traditional African society. When you talk about impact, are you understanding what impact is? What is the meaning of impact? Yes, very good. The results of the introduction of money in the traditional African society. That is what the whole topic is about. So and here when you're talking about the results, we are talking about both the negative and the what? Positive. So number one, there is break of family ties. Breaking of family ties. Because people migrated from rural to urban areas in search of what? Of jobs, so search for employment. So the family being together in the traditional African society was not there. There was also production of cash crops increased. Why are we saying that the production of cash crops increased? This is because the production of traditional subsistence food crops declined and they were replaced by cash crops. These are crops that are bringing income. And production of food crops that traditionally were used by the Africans was not there anymore. It declined. It was still there, but it declined. There was also, number three, introduction of wage labor. When we say there was introduction of wage labor, we mean that there was working for payment began. Because remember, they worked in the traditional African society, we worked as a community. We worked communally together. But now you had to work alone in order to receive payment. Number four, Africans were reduced to squatters. What do we mean by Africans were reduced to squatters? Is because arable land that was alienated from Africans, now they had to live as squatters in the plantations of the European. So the land that was arable, the land that was good for farming, and was given to the European, and then they had the plantations where the Africans had to work, and so they were reduced to squatters because now that is not their own land; they're just workers. Number five, the gap between the rich and the poor. There was the creation of the gap between the rich and the poor. Or you can even say that gap increased. Because now it meant that those people who were working in a bigger post after going through the new formal education were getting more pay. Therefore, they were rich. And then and also the European were also rich because the plantations belonged to them. And then we had the poor Africans who were living in the squatters. So that gap increased. There was that gap now. Remember, traditionally that gap was not there because the poor could be helped in the what? The community. The land was used by everyone. There was also emergence of vices. And example of these vices are we have bribery and corruption. There was also prostitution and robbery. These were the vices that came out because of the introduction of money. Number 7, rural-urban migration increased. And this, you find out that the rural areas were left with those people who are weak, and less educated. They were weaker and less educated. Because the people who were educated moved to the urban areas in order to get the what? The jobs. Because if they got the jobs, they were able to pay the taxes to the European what? Government. Number 9, breadwealth was commercialized, or breadwealth became commercialized. Now you could pay breadwealth through what? Money, yes? Because it was there. Previously, people could bring forth their breadwealth via goods like honey, sugarcane, and examples like those ones. Number 10, there was exploitation of the poor. So remember that the exploitation of the poor was done by the rich. So there was exploitation of the poor by the rich. And how did they exploit the poor? Through poor wages. They gave them poor wages, that is, they gave them poor salary. And these were the European colonialists or the settlers. And then they also exploited the poor through overcharging their goods. Yes, overcharging prices on their goods. These goods that I talked about, like sugar, matches, that they were selling on the bicycles. There was also destruction of the environment. So destruction of the natural environment became rampant. And why did it become rampant? Because there was need to create room for building projects, roads and urban centers. Because the growth of the urban centers was being rampant also. So the destruction of natural environment in order to build roads and other projects, and also schools. See? Cost of living increased, point number 12. So, and we're saying here that the cost of living increased because everything required money to be acquired. In order for you to acquire anything, you needed what? Money. Number 13, there was a deterioration of the African values. So the cherished African values, customs, and practices deteriorated. Because now people were just working for money. Remember when I was talking about point number 2, is it 2? Point number 1, I talked about the breaking of family ties. So people are not together because people moved to the rural urban areas. And the last the last point is loss of African dignity, number 14. Loss of African dignity. There was loss of African dignity because the African needed money to pay taxes. So they were pushed to work in the plantations under very deplorable conditions, under very bad conditions, in order for them to get the money. to pay taxes. If you, examples of these deplorable conditions, you can give me, because you read them in history. What are the conditions, some of the worst conditions they underwent working in the plantations? Those who are doing history, did you read it? You read? So tell me about it. Why are people not talking? Usinyamaze, zungumza. Thank God you're saved by the bell. So when we come back, we are going to talk about the Christian teaching on wealth, money, and poverty.